the man hit the floor. And so I scooted back a little bit more underneath the table, and you could see he was bleeding and he was looking at me. And I just remember watching my father, his hand like come up and then down to hit him. The only reason why I knew it was him is because he had a pinky ring on.
Welcome to this episode of Chatting with Stacks. I'm your host, Bill Stacks, and today I got Rita Gigante. Hello.
Hey,
How are
thanks
you?
for having me, hon. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. I've been anticipating this one for a while.
Awesome.
So for the people that don't know who you are, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Rita Gigante. I am a psychic medium healer, author, spiritual mentor, and I do teach classes. The daughter of Vincent Gigante and Olympia Gigante. And I wrote a book called The Godfather's Daughter, an unlikely story of love, healing, and redemption. And for those who don't know, my dad was the head of the Genovese crime family and also the head of the commission in Manhattan.
Yeah, so he was a very powerful person.
Very powerful, yes.
So what was your early life like?
It was tough. I mean, we travel, like at 6 months old, we moved out to New Jersey. I was born in Manhattan. 6 months old, we moved out to New Jersey. So I lived half my life in New York City, half my life in New Jersey. And it was tough because Dad only lived with us for about a year. And then he moved back to the city with my grandmother because there was an incident with the police department who said that we were bribing them. All it was we gave them a $50 check for Christmas. That's all it really was. My sister actually brought them the check. It wasn't cash or anything. They made a big deal out of it. They said that that my dad was trying to corrupt the police and get stuff that get something from them that he might want, and which was nonsense. But my dad and my mom got arrested at the time. And once that happened, my dad went back to the city. The charges were dropped by my mom, for my mom. And that was the end of that. He decided he was staying in New York after that. He would come and visit, but
How old were you at that time?
it's only a year and a half when that happened. Yeah.
So what are your earliest memories as a child?
I mean, I remember going back and forth, to the city to see him. But I would have to say the scariest, earliest memory was him, me witnessing a beating that he was giving somebody in my grandmother's apartment underneath her dining room table. It was very, very traumatizing. It left me speechless. And I also pretty much buried that memory till I wrote my book. And then the memory surfaced. But, because I was under the table, nobody saw me. There was music on all the time in my grandmother's house. So there was Italian music on, and it was pretty loud. And you can hear the commotion of what was going on. And then all of a sudden, the man hit the floor. And so I scooted back a little bit more underneath the table. And you could see he was bleeding and he was looking at me. And I just remember watching my father, his hand like come up and then down to hit him. The only reason why I knew it was him is because he had a pinky ring on. Pretty much, shredded the man's face. And I just watched the blood like trickle down to my feet almost. And I was shaking. I was completely frozen at that moment, in the sense that I couldn't scream, I couldn't move, I had my hands over my mouth. And then the last thing he did was step on the man's face, and he said, don't ever fucking disrespect me again. And then he told somebody, get him out of here. And that was it. That was my
Where
first
was
encounter.
his mom at this time?
So my
She
mom and my grandmother were upstairs in someone else's apartment at the time. I had just kind of scooted out, came down the stairs, and I was just kind of hanging out underneath my grandmother's table playing, you know.
yeah.
They didn't realize I was there. Nobody did.
So
Because
after
something like that wouldn't happen in front of any of us.
yeah, they tried to keep it separate, right?
Always, always. Yeah. That was
So
the only time I witnessed something like that. I mean, I've witnessed, you know, the people that was in his group, they would come and sit at my grandmother's dining room table all the time, and she would, you know, bring them coffee and some biscuits, you know, whatever she had in the house, cake, and they would be sitting. So it'd be like, again, the radio on, the TV on, watching cartoons, and it was loud, but there was always a whispering going on. So if someone had an issue, they get up, whisper something to him, and he'd whisper back. And then they would either get some type of command to go and do whatever they needed to do, or things were written on pieces of paper and handed back and forth to each other. And when that was done, they would either rip them up and throw them in the toilet, flush it, or they'd burn them. So I was watching this, you know, my whole life, knowing that he was somebody revered, feared, and loved at the same time. But I had no clue, absolutely no clue what he did. I just knew he was important until I was 16.
Is that when you found out that he was
Yeah, that's when
involved
I
with
found
this?
out.
And
Yeah.
what was the reason why you were able to even find out?
Yeah, so there was a rumor going around in school that that's who he was, and, you know, this one girl was calling me a mafia princess and all this other shit, and I was just like, you know, like, you know, when you're pissed because someone's talking about your family, right? Then there's the other side of you going, could that be true? You know?
Yeah.
So that day that the rumor was like really, really like, you know, I was hearing it from everyone. I just, this girl was just like relentless. I ended up having a physical encounter with her in the bathroom of the school, and pretty much beat the shit out of her, um, just because I was so tired of hearing it. She probably wasn't the only one, you know, saying it, but she was the instigator for most of it.
Yeah.
And I was having a really bad day and kind of snapped, you know. But once I did find out, there was a lot of relief connected to it, because it was like, you know, okay, now I understand why things the way they were, you know, why my mother was the way she was, um, why there was so many secrets and we couldn't do this and we couldn't do that, or, you know, we had to leave at certain times. Um, you know, finally, like all the puzzles started to snap into place, the pieces of the puzzle, you know. So there
Yeah.
was relief, and then there was anxiety over it, because I didn't know if they could come after us, if they would come after him, meaning the FBI, if the other families could hurt us in any way. Once I learned who the other families were and all that kind of stuff, I was stunned to know how powerful he really was. You know, because I saw him as my dad. So
Yeah.
this wasn't like, you know, for me growing up, I want to say, you know, I was a change of life baby. So the sibling above me is 10 years older than me. So I'm witnessing things that, you know, no kid should have to witness, obviously. But
Yeah.
then, you know, knowing not to open your mouth, knowing not to say anything, knowing not to ask questions, it's just kind of how you're raised, you know, because people
Yeah.
say, well, did you ask? Well, the times that I did ask, I got lied to, you know?
So
So
right when you find out, what do you have a conversation with your mom or your dad after that?
no, there was no conversation. There was just like, when my mom, you know, knew that I knew, I came home and she just said to me, I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but you know, this is what it is. And you're not to speak about it to anyone ever. And if anyone asks you, your father's sick.
So was he, because a lot of people say he was playing a sick role, playing like he's
He
crazy.
had he had a uh, he had a heart condition, so he was sick physically that way. Um, you know, was he feigning insanity? Yes, he was. He was feigning insanity. He was probably one of the smartest men that, you know, walked this earth. Um, he he was a very fair man. He was, um, how do I want to put this? He could have ran any company, CEO. He could have done anything he wanted to do. But you know, the time that he grew up, there was not much of, unless you went to school and you graduated or your family was in that business, right? Then there
Yeah.
was he wasn't going to make money, a lot of money any other way other than to probably get involved in something like this. And it was important for him to take care of his family. He loved boxing,
Yeah, that was
which he
one thing.
probably would have, you know, stuck to um, as part of a career if he could have. But once Vito got a hold of him, Vito Genovese, and Vito loved him. You know, my dad had a very charismatic way about him. So once Vito took him under his wing, and my dad got, you know, he realized the kind of money he could make. He realized the kind of power he could wield. Um, it drew him in. You know, it just drew him in, and then there was still one time I remember him saying to me that he could have gotten out.